Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today I am going to be continuing on with my Sleepy Hollow Katrina stripey dress project. Of course, the iconic black and white striped dress from Sleepy Hollow. If you have not already seen the first video on this project, I did actually already make the petticoat in that video. So I will link that right up here and then also down below in the description if you want to go check that out first. But today I am going to be starting in on the bodice. Of course, the kind of more challenging part of this. Now, I have made a couple of 18th century outfits within the past year, namely my Felicity outfit and my pastoral outfit that I made earlier this year. And so I'm hoping that I can kind of use those patterns and like tweak them to get what I need, because I'm just gonna pop up some pictures of Katrina's bodice here, but basically we are looking at what is commonly termed a zone front, or like the cutaway looking front of this bodice. And then one of the other hallmarks here is that the center back of the bodice is cut in one piece with the center back of the skirt. So we don't have any sort of delineation or separation between those two pieces. Now, of course, the stripes in the original for the movie were drawn on, so they could have put it all together and then drawn on the stripes. I don't know if that's how they did it or not, but I'm working with black and white striped poly cotton fabric that I got on Amazon, which I will link below down in the description if you're interested. And so I have to make the stripes look like the ones in the movie without having the ability to draw them on. So some of the things that we're looking at here is that I know that I'm going to need a center back seam. Ideally, I'm going to try and match the stripes to what we are seeing in this, which is that the white is the very center back. Those are like the stripes that are put together on that seam, and it gets wider at the top and then narrower at the waist. So I'm hoping that I can make that work with my patterning. And I'm going to be doing this by adapting what I had used for Felicity and the pastoral dress, which is actually an adaptation of the Amalia jacket pattern, because I happen to already have that. This is from Scroop Patterns. And you'll notice one thing that I actually have not used from this pattern yet is that view B is a cutaway look. However, I believe, I haven't actually looked at the instructions for view B yet, but I believe that it is still a center front closure. Now, we can very obviously tell when looking at Katrina's bodice here that we don't actually see a closure. It's kind of a hidden closure. So what that means is we need some sort of almost like a, it's almost, I call it like a fake stomacher. Stomacher is probably the wrong term for this, because a stomacher in 18th century is when you have that sort of V front and you have the piece that is underneath that V, and usually the sides come in and pin or hook or whatever in place to that stomacher. That's not really what we have here, because it's actually going to be the zone front that is its own piece, and somehow like one of the sides that's coming over like this is going to have to hide where that closure is, and the closure is probably going to actually be somewhere like on the side, hidden underneath that diagonal part. So that's kind of how the structure of the front of this is going to work. But I'm hoping that I can just adapt to this pattern. The back pieces are not going to be probably exactly what they are in the movie, but I really want that center back to look correct. And I think that with this pattern, I can do this. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to go back and watch my videos where I patterned like Felicity, for example, and see what I did to take all of these pieces and turn them into not a jacket. I think it was mostly just folding in the skirt pieces, to be honest. But yeah, that's what I have to figure out. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm actually looking at the new Patterns of Fashion 1, and I am looking at this dress, which is from 1785 to 95, which has that sort of cutaway front right there. Though again, it has a center front opening, But when we look at the pattern page for it, we can see that it has a back that is cut continuously as well. So I can kind of take the skirt layout idea and a little bit use this to help. It's not the same shape, honestly, but I think that I can kind of look at this just as an idea of how this might work, skirt and bodice wise. So let's go ahead and get into some patterning. You guys, I just watched those bits of video for Felicity and for the pastoral dress, and I didn't use the Amalia jacket bodice. I think that was going to be my original plan, and then apparently I used my court gown bodice pattern from 2014 and altered that. And while I have found the original court gown bodice pattern, I can't find the altered stuff anywhere. Now, my room is an absolute disaster. Like, I don't think you get at all just how much of a disaster this room is. I have not cleaned this room since at least before Rose. Like, there are still pattern pieces from Rose places. And clearly, it's been longer than that because there must also be pattern pieces from the pastoral dress somewhere. But I don't know where. So now I think I'm going to have to use my precious sewing time to at least dig through some of the piles and find those pieces, because those are the pieces that I need. So I know that I look like an absolute disaster right now, but after cleaning up basically my entire sewing room and still not finding it, I decided, okay, I'm gonna go through my 2 bins of like the me-made patterns. I kind of keep them in bins that are meant to go in cubbies, but only one of them actually goes in a cubby. And I'm just gonna go through them again and literally like pull them all out to try to find this. So I go through one bin, no luck. I start going through the second bin and I see this one. I was going to sort them, by the way. I was going to sort them into patterns I really don't use versus patterns I do use. So the first bin was all patterns I really don't use. And I started going through the second bin. Okay, there's a few that I'm going to use, keep them in there. And then I see this one, and it's labeled at the top, Anna bodice, question mark. And I'm like, well, the Anna bodice, even if I still use it, it doesn't really fit. So I'm going to pull that out and put it into the other one. I'd already gone past this label of Anna bodice several times and initially looking for the pattern. And when I pull it out, what do I see? Yeah, Felicity bodice. I wrote Felicity bodice lower down, but didn't cross out, or at least didn't cross out well enough, the Anna bodice. So I looked at this like 3 or 4 times today before cleaning the entire room and wasting like 2 hours. But I found the pattern. So now that I did find the pattern, I am remembering that I made a lot of changes to this bodice after I used this pattern for it, because I didn't make a mock-up of this. I just went directly to this and then I made changes and then I didn't transfer them to the pattern piece because I don't know what I was thinking. But these are definitely quite different. Like the width of this strap, I mean, like look at the difference of the width of the strap, and like the point is very different. Now obviously for Sleepy Hollow I do have to change this anyway because this is not a stomacher front, it is the zone front. So, or you know, we're just gonna call it zone front. I know that wasn't technically what it was called, but it's going to have to come together here and then come apart this way, and then there will be the sort of stomacher piece that goes underneath it there. So I'm honestly kind of wondering how much use this is going to be even at all. I did also pull out this pattern piece here. This was from my riding habit that I made back in like 2014, I think, and it is too small in the bust because it's with my old stays that really don't fit well. So I definitely would have to extend the bust. I feel like the rest of this did actually fit quite well, and this is a zone front cut. So this might actually even be better to use. I think I kind of have to take something kind of in the middle of the 2 pattern pieces, combine them together, and just mock it up and see what happens. So just to kind of compare these patterns here, I can't quite lay out the stomacher and the bodice piece together, but this is basically the center front. So you can see that it is a little small here. And also I know it looks super short in the shoulder strap, but actually there was a whole separate piece that went in here and joined the 2 together. So the length is probably the same but the Felicity was really wide out this way. This is really far out this way, so I definitely want something in between over here, and then the strap's gonna like tilt up more because I'm gonna keep that arm's eye shape. And then for Sleepy Hollow, it's actually really gonna curve out from here, really be a diagonal out from like right up here at the point down to probably here-ish. It might even need to be cut away a little bit wider, and then the stripes will actually wind up being the opposite direction of how this piece is cut with these stripes. Have you ever drawn options into your mock-up? That is what I'm doing here. So as you can see, I've done kind of 2 neckline options because I'm not sure. This was where I drew initially, and then I was like, ooh, what if that's not high enough? I'll draw a little bit higher. And then same with, I drew this inner line initially, and then I was like, ooh, what if that's not wide enough? I will draw wider. So I'm going to cut it on the exterior lines, and then I can always fold / cut away the fabric if it is too much, but that way I won't have to make a whole other mock-up. So I'm going to cut this out, attach it to the back pieces that I already had from my last mock-up, and try it on, and let's see what happens. All right, I have the first try of the mock-up on, and I totally forgot that like I did cut it with the point in the back. But basically what's going to happen is the outer portion, the striped portion, that is going to be cut in one. I've already talked to you guys about that. And I realized also that the side backs are also going to be cut continuously, because you can kind of see in this picture right here, which I actually saw this, that Christine had used it in her video. I couldn't find this picture on my own, but you can see that the side backs are also a continuous piece. There's no seam there, and then it looks like there's a seam that starts to happen around like the sides. I'm honestly not even sure how far back, but because I'm cutting this with only 2 pieces on each side of the back and then the rest of it is the front, I can't go any further than that really. I have to make this part a little bit separate. So I really don't need the point. I don't think I'm gonna have that deep of a point in my lining, which basically what I'm trying on right now is kind of like my lining, because the lining is not going to go all the way down into the skirts. It is just going to go in the bodice portion. So the one thing that I'm noticing right now is that although I kept the length the same as with Felicity, I don't know if it's because I have the bum pad with this, which maybe sits just a little bit higher on my hips than the pocket hoops, but I do feel like it's actually too long. I have already folded up the seam allowance on the bottom edge here, and I feel like because it is actually hitting my hips, do you see how it's kind of having to pull up and over and therefore causing the wrinkles? So yeah, I do need to just shorten that up a little bit on the sides. I can just fold that out of the way. Once I get that, I'll be able to check this part right here, because I definitely think this is coming too far in like here. I think this should be out maybe another inch. And then this is not bad considering I did not fold the seam allowance on this edge right here. I don't know if the very top should kind of meet edge to edge with a hook. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but the trim will also go there. So really there is about probably 2 inches that could actually come together up at the top where the trim is going to go over. So we don't really even see that the fabric is coming together. We just see the trim, and otherwise it V's away from that. So yeah, I'm gonna fold that a little higher. And I think I also do need to take in the shoulder seams, like where it's going to be, because this seems to be hitting very wide on my shoulder. I think that's what I did with the pastoral one as well. All right, I think I'm in a pretty good place now. I folded up the waist pretty significantly. I also folded away some of the front, and I have also cut a whole lot off of the arm's eye area, kind of almost all the way around, but especially out over here. I also have marked where I want the edge to be on the neckline. I have not yet cut away the excess of that, but I do need to. My one issue that I'm having, which is like me always with 18th century, is the fact that like 18th century outfits, you know, they are straight. They just protrude outwards basically at the bust, and they don't really have much consideration for then coming in over if you want anything over, which I do. I don't want, you know, to be low cut down to here. So that's why we're getting kind of some weirdness going on here. But I'm gonna live with that. I think that's fine. And actually, according to Christine in her video, it sounded like there was some sort of a drawstring in the neckline of the one that Christina Ricci wears. So I could always do that if I have any, you know, issues like there. But I think that this is good. I do want to check, I kind of cut out like a stomacher piece. So, oh wait, it goes this way. So I do want to check how that will fit in with all of this. And I think I'm also going to attempt to kind of draw on some stripes just so I know what angle it should probably be cut at on the stripey fabric. But yeah, I think this is pretty good. I am going to shorten the little tail in the lining. I made kind of a dot of where that can get shortened too. And then it's just a matter of figuring out how to cut all of this out in the stripey fabric. But first, let's go ahead and try this stomacher piece. So I don't know how much of this you can see because it is white on white, but I'm feeling kind of torn right now because I have gone in and pinned in the stomacher piece. I definitely narrowed the point from what I originally had, and I have folded up the seam allowance away from that. So this is the point that I'm really liking now, because hers is honestly very, very narrow. But what I'm torn about is that really on Christina Ricci, this cutaway goes almost all of the way out to like here. Like it's almost to the complete sides, but she is tiny. And so like my cutaway here is already, like the stomacher area, it's already a lot larger than hers is. And I just feel like if I make it wider, the scale is going to be off. Like it's not going to be narrow enough for the right cutaway. And I think that I would rather have the over parts go out further in front towards the center front and have the stomacher angles and everything look correct, as opposed to have the edges of it further out like hers, but then have the stomacher look very wide. I can, of course, always fold that up later as long as I cut the stomacher wide enough, which right now I've got a really big overlap here. So honestly, I kind of think that I'm going to cut the stomacher as wide as I have it right now. And I haven't cut away the neckline yet, so that's why there's a lot of rippling going on here. But yeah, I think I'm gonna cut it as is, see what this looks like all in the stripey fabric, and then see if I want to pull any more of this away. So now that I figured out the mock-up, what I am trying to figure out is how to cut the two back panels, the center back and the side back, that will wind up having the skirts attached. And the dilemma that I'm kind of finding right now is like when we look at, for example, the gown that I think I showed you earlier, there was this one in Patterns of Fashion 1, we're looking at just the backs being attached and no other pieces. This one is from 85 to 95, which, I mean, it's later than the look of Sleepy Hollow, but I think technically Sleepy Hollow was actually supposed to take place at the very, very end, because I'm pretty sure they talk about going into a new century, like in that scene. So really it should be past then. We also have in Patterns of Fashion 6, there is a gown from 85 to 92 that interestingly enough has all of the pieces connected in to the skirts. And then the skirts are just pleated up between them. This gown, by the way, just so you know what it looks like, it is this one right here. So again, we have a much later looking gown. This one is very much a transitional gown, but it is cut in kind of an interesting way that may actually be slightly more applicable to what I'm making here. However, really the style, like this one being a zone front gown, that one is honestly a little closer. And there's also a lot more skirt that is in this one than there is in the other one. And my initial plan was for the overskirts to still have two panels of skirt, like 2 widths of the fabric, just like my petticoat does, even though this is taking up less of a place around the body because it's really only going from here back. But I wanted it to be fuller because we're not putting any like ruffles on the bottom, we're polonizing it up. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted more fullness there. So the question is how to break it up. Like, A, do I want a center back seam in my skirt panel? This one does not have a center back seam. If we look closely right here, you can kind of see the lines, which this right here is a seam, this right here is a seam versus center back right there. So we don't have a center back seam. And honestly, like when we look at the actual one that she's wearing, it's kind of impossible to tell necessarily where any seams are, so who knows. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I want that to be cut and how that needs to be distributed everywhere, and like how many pleats do I want, like how much extra fabric do I want that's going to be in between those seams, because those excesses, basically what happens is you almost go out at like a right angle when you're looking at it coming off of where the bodice is, and those excesses wind up getting pleated in and kind of tucked in behind so that you get that fullness that comes out, which you can kind of see in like this picture right here, which again, I credit this to Sosteen because she was able to find this and I was not. And yeah, so I just have to kind of figure out how much goes behind there and where it gets distributed. And I'm not going to mock this up. I mean, I have lots of the stripey fabric, so like I can recut this. It's not an issue. I'm not going to mock this up. I just have to kind of wing it, which is a little scary. If I were to not have a center back seam, I could actually wind up cutting both the center back and the side back pieces out of that one with the panel. But ideally, I do also want seams here-ish. I don't need them because it's so cut away that like I can access pocket slits from the front, honestly. But ideally, you do kind of want pocket slits here. So the best way to do that is to have your seams there. So yeah, there's just a lot going through my mind and I have to figure out how this skirt distribution goes. I will let you know what I come up with. So I decided that the best way to figure this out would be to actually take a width of the fabric and pleat it up on the dress form and just kind of see what happens. And I'm kind of finding two things out here. One, yes, her panels in the back, like there are probably 2 panels that go continuously from top to bottom, like you can see over here in this picture. But Christina Ricci is of course much narrower than I am, so her side back panel is much narrower than mine. And so looking at mine here, I feel like where that would be, it would be like no wider than about right here for the other continuous. Like it's almost like there should be another seam right here. I'm not repatterning this, so I'm just leaving this pattern as is, but it does make me kind of tempted of like, okay, well, do I then just do the back? It's possible also that hers has fourreau pleats, which means that the back piece itself has little stacked pleats. Christine did that on hers. I'm not doing that on mine because I don't have the ability to kind of just like redraw the stripes wherever I want. And also I just kind of don't want to. Basically, I want to do just this patterning here. So my dilemma is, do I have both of these cut continuously top to bottom, and at which point it would go out to here. Right now I have double stacked box pleats in each of these areas so that we get some, you know, extra skirt going on, and there would be the center back seam right here. And then I have knife pleats going on here. I folded each knife pleat halfway through the stripe and then connected to another stripe. I don't know if I love that, and I do need to actually either cut away the bodice 1/2 inch more, which, you know, I was tempted to do anyway, or I need to make this part extend 1/2 inch further because I'm about a 1/2 inch off, maybe even 1 inch off from where they are hitting over in the front. But yeah, I mean, I think the fullness is fine. So I think a 2-panel overskirt is just what I want. I would then have that polonized up kind of like that. It's just, do I want this piece quite so wide? So just kind of for kicks and because I wound up with a free evening, I decided to see what would happen if I tried to pleat the back and furrow. And I feel like you can't even see it, which is actually kind of what I wanted, but each of these is pleated. I haven't sewn anything down yet. It's all just pins, but here's our center back seam. So basically I took two big panels and sewed them together, except that the center back I did cut the same as the lining, which is made out of cotton twill here. And then I seamed those together, and I kind of went in like, I don't know, 8 inches from the edge of the fabric to do those seams. And then the other 8 inches is box pleated all up in here. And then over here, I just kind of started folding over pleats and like tapering them down so they're a little narrower at the waist, and then releasing them down here. Do I know if this is gonna work? No, I'm really not sure. Do I know if it's a match for this? No, I'm really not sure, but it seems kind of right. And then at the end of the piece, which the edge is right here, then I would cut like another horizontal bit of skirt that would get box pleated in right there, and then it would go into knife pleats that attach to the front piece of the bodice. I think that actually worked. I've only done the half of a side, so I need to do the other side, and then I need to like double check, and I feel like I'm gonna run out of pins in doing that, but it does seem like it's working, I guess. Well, I went ahead and I stitched down that side that I had pinned just on the machine because I don't have time for hand sewing all of these. And I think it looks nice. Again, I feel like you can kind of hardly see that it is pleated. I don't think I stitched it quite low enough for the waist. This felt too low, so I just kind of stopped at the pin above it. So I think I'm going to need to continue it a little bit more, but I wasn't sure without like putting it on. And my plan is to basically go about 2 inches out from where the lining goes to on here and cut my bodice shape like that, and then just like kind of get rid of the excess until the waist. That gives me the stuff that I can pleat and play with, etc. So yeah, here we are though. Now I have to attempt to somehow match this side to this side. All right, I think I'm at a good stopping point for the night. I did continue those lines a little further down, so I think they're going now to the waist, but it is hard to tell since my dress form is short-waisted. But they are all now stitched in place, and I think they look really, really nice. And so that's what those pleats look like there. And then I've just kind of like faked the pleats over here. Oh, I did put the fronts on, by the way. So the fronts are just flat-lined pieces. It's flat-lined with the twill, and then it is attached like sewn, you know, modern style at the side seam and at the shoulder. I've just kind of folded in the excess right now because I did cut the back pieces with about 2.5 inches extra, just in case I wanted to put one more pleat in there. Honestly, looking at it here though, I don't think I do. So I can probably go ahead and cut that out, but I think I want to try it on first. But I did also then pleat up the sides here, just like 1-inch pleats. It's wonderful with stripes. Pleats are, I mean, they're so easy to do because you don't have to measure anything. And that seems to be actually a good measurement to get to the front, with the addition of part of a box pleat that goes back this way a little bit. So there's a kind of a box pleat in here just a little bit as well in that side seam. But yeah, I think it's looking really nice. I haven't tested out the other side yet. And this, like, I haven't even cut away the extra fabric. So basically this fabric here, it goes up to here, but then I just folded it in the inside. So it's, well, you can't tell it's all stripey, but it's right in there. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and try this on. If it all works, I'm going to cut away the excess type stuff, and then I can actually pleat the waist for real and attach it to the bodice. And then I guess it's going to be sleeves. So as you can see, I have everything on here. This is still just pinned in place over here and not even attached on this side. But looking at like the back and where kind of the edge of the arm size should be once I cut off the excess, I think everything's looking really good. I think I'm really liking the cutaway angle too, but it is hard to tell with everything just kind of like pinned in place. I do think that it is sitting right over here, so I think I folded down the correct amount within the skirts, and I just need to cut off the excess. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and cut off the excess at like the arm size. Oh, I guess what I can't see very well in the viewfinder here and didn't notice in the mirror is if the pleats are looking good. So I'm going to take a look at that, but I think they are. Like, everything feels good in the back. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at that and then just determine if this is for the best. Cut off the excess both in the arm's eye and in the part that's folded over in the skirt. And then that way, I don't know if I can go ahead and just sew the skirt onto it right now. I think I might want to finish the underside of the bodice first, like this fold. I think I might just hand sew that up and then attach the skirts. I'm pretty sure that's what I've been doing with like Felicity in the pastoral gown. So yeah, I'll probably do that first. Same with like finishing the edge here. Though I hate doing all of like the finishing before I really can see the full thing, but I do think that it's at a good angle and everything, so I think that's gonna be okay. But yeah, so far so good. The bodice and skirt edges are now all cut off to match the lining, and I've gone around and I've serged all the edges in here. I did make one little oops, which was that you notice how on this side right here, it's cut down to the side, but then it's not, like the skirt isn't actually cut down all the way to the bottom of the bodice. Yeah, well, on the first side that I was doing, I forgot that probably wasn't what I wanted to do. So I did cut it. There's a little slit right there when I serged both the sides just because they were already starting to fray. I don't think it should be an issue. I believe this will wind up in that big box pleat. So hopefully that's not an issue, but I guess I'll see in a moment because I'm about to reattach the front pieces. I did detach them so that I could do all of this. I'm going to reattach them and then pleat up the skirt. Okay, so let's talk about everything that I have been working on here in preparation for attaching the skirt portion to the bodice. So first off, I put it back together, obviously. Then I went and I put bias tape, just, you know, pre-purchased bias tape from Joann's, and I put that along the entire top of the neckline, press that down in place. That will get hand sewn down. Even though it's going to get covered with trim, I still just prefer to hand sew this sort of area. And then same thing with the fronts here. So I put the same bias tape there, separate strips so that I don't have to worry about the corners. And also because I wasn't entirely positive what order things were going to go in. So I just did a separate strip there. Then I went and I pleated up the skirts. So each one has basically like 3 inches to 1 because I'm just following the colors so that I get white, black, etc. And this kind of, in some parts, matches up with the bodice, which is awesome. The bodice is, of course, at an angle, so the math, like, it just doesn't quite match up. Obviously, we're quite off here, and then we're on here because of the width difference of an angle versus a straight. So once I basted those pleats in place, then I was able to go back and press up this bit right here. So just the interior, I pressed it in place. That will get stitched down, but I'm not doing it yet. And I'm going to be silly about this because I can't just use one color thread because obviously, like if I use white, it would show really badly on the black. If I use black, it would show really badly on the white. So I think I'm actually going to do this by hand, which I know it's like more time consuming than I want it to be, but that way I can hide the other threads in the back and go like one, knot off, hide the tail, do the black, knot off, hide the tail, etc. Whereas if I were to do this on the machine, do like a white section, then knot it off on the machine, black section. Because of the way that a machine is, if I do the type where it knots off right in place, like 3 stitches on top of each other, then it will not be as secure. And if I do the kind where it goes back and forth to do the tie off, it will look really obvious. So I think I'm just going to hand sew it. It's not a very big swath. It's just, you know, about the width of my hand. And I'll do that on both sides, and then that will be set, and I'll be able to do all the hand sewing up here. So I'm going to take this with me to the show tonight. I've got some downtime during the show, and we'll see how much of this I can get done. Oh, and the one other thing that I did before pleating up the waist was I did actually turn in the edge right here. It's just a selvage edge, so I didn't finish it or anything. This is also going to get covered with trim. this is what all of that hand sewing has amounted to. You can see my tiny little stitches where I was keeping those colors correct along the waistline. Pretty proud of those. I did like half of that actually at the theater, and I did all of this portion at the theater. So yeah, all of the finishing bits are done now. Now we can move on to the sleeves. Except that it is now Sunday night. So actually I will be moving on to the sleeves in next week's video. I will be doing at that point for finishing everything up, I will be, hi Dora, be doing the sleeves and the stomacher because I haven't even cut out the stomacher yet. And I still need to hem the dress itself. And I also need to do the tapes to be able to polonaise up the back or bustle up the back. And then I will also be doing all of the trim because there's going to be a lot of trim, and I will have to run to Joann's to see what they have as far as like the black lace goes, and then I'll be making the rest of the trim out of the stripy fabric. So yeah, make sure that you check back for that video. But that is going to be it for this video this week. So I do apologize that you're not getting to see the end of this until after Halloween, because if you're watching this the day that it comes out, happy Halloween! It's Halloween today. But because I am making this for me for Halloween, you're a week delayed. So anyway, yes, Dora, I just got home from our last show of Seussical, so Dora is very excited that I have just gotten home. But if you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes additional content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have linked my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can leave me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here below the video on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Janelle. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy Halloween, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!